He was so into you, texting first, calling nonstop, making plans, saying goodnight like it mattered. You felt safe, desired, maybe even special. Then, almost overnight, something changed. The calls slowed down. The texts became shorter. The energy, that invisible current between two people, began to fade. You sensed it immediately, that sinking feeling in your stomach, the quiet panic in your chest. You start asking yourself a million questions. Did I do something wrong? Did I say too much? Should I reach out again or give him space? You stand at a crossroads, and what you do next will determine everything. Because here's the truth. When you pull away the right way, he won't just notice, he'll feel it, deeply, viscerally. And suddenly, the dynamic shifts in your favor. This isn't about playing games. It's not manipulation. It's about understanding human psychology and the undeniable force of scarcity and how it awakens desire, urgency, and appreciation. When something feels scarce, its value skyrockets. It's true in business, in art, and especially in love. Luxury brands don't flood the market. They limit access. Exclusive clubs don't beg people to join. They create waiting lists. Why? Because humans are wired to want what they can't easily have. The same law applies to relationships. When you're always available, always saying yes, always waiting, there's no urgency, no spark. But the moment that energy shifts, when presence becomes optional instead of assumed, something powerful happens. The mind starts to react. Psychologists call this psychological reactance, the instinctive response we feel when our access to something is suddenly limited. When a person senses they're losing something they once took for granted, they don't become indifferent, they become obsessed. That's the invisible pull of distance. And it works because it awakens emotional gravity, the realization of what once felt ordinary now feels irreplaceable. People often think love is built by constant closeness, by always being there, always talking, always reassuring. But love doesn't breathe in constant proximity. It thrives in waves, closeness and space, presence and absence. When the rhythm disappears, when there's only one endless stream of contact, love stops feeling like passion. It starts feeling like routine. That's when attraction fades. But the second one person creates space, the emotional tide begins to turn. Think of it like music. If every note were constant, if there were no silence between them, it would sound like noise. But when a pause comes at the right moment, the next note hits harder. That's the power of silence in love. It doesn't create distance, it creates meaning. Carl Jung once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." When someone feels your absence, they begin to feel themselves. They reflect, they analyze, they become conscious of what you meant. Men, especially, process emotion differently than women. While women often talk to understand what they feel, men withdraw. They go inward. They reflect in silence. That's not rejection, it's processing. And when you keep chasing during that silence, you interrupt the very process that could make him realize your worth. So what should you do? The answer isn't to ignore him or play cold. It's to reclaim your energy, to redirect your focus inward, to remember that your life, your time, your attention, your light are valuable currencies. When you stop over-investing in someone who's pulling back, you send a subtle but powerful message. I am not waiting for you to choose me. I'm already choosing myself. That shift is magnetic, because suddenly the emotional dynamic changes. He begins to sense a loss of control. He starts to wonder, where is she? Who is she with? Why does it feel different now? And that curiosity grows into longing. But make no mistake, this isn't a trick. It's not about pretending. It's about balance. Because attraction isn't built in constant presence. It's built in the dance between presence and absence. A relationship at its healthiest is like fire. It needs oxygen, space, to keep burning. Smother it and it dies. Leave it completely unattended and it burns out. But when you find that rhythm, closeness, then distance, warmth, then air, it becomes something unstoppable. That's what pulling away the right way does. It creates room for appreciation. When you're always available, your presence becomes expected. But when you step back, it becomes missed. And in that gap, something remarkable happens. The person who was drifting begins to move toward you, not because you asked, but because they feel it. Jung also said, "What you resist persists." The more you try to fix what's shifting by chasing, calling, or over-explaining, the more resistance you create. But when you stop resisting, when you release control, everything begins to realign. Men are instinctively drawn to independence, not dependency. It's not arrogance, it's biology. Men chase what challenges them. They value what they fear losing. So when you stop being an open book, when you stop centering your world around them, you awaken a primal response, the urge to earn you again. But the secret lies in your energy. You can't fake confidence. You can't pretend you're detached when inside you're waiting for his text. Energy doesn't lie. The goal isn't to act, it's to become, to truly embrace your own fullness, your own rhythm, your own life. When your energy shifts from, "I hope he still wants me," to, "I know my worth," everything about you changes. Your voice, your presence, your aura, and that's what he feels first. So when the calls slow down and the texts fade, don't panic. Don't chase. Pull back with grace. Focus on what fills your world, your passions, your goals, your peace. Let silence do what words never could. Because space doesn't break connection, it reveals it. If the bond was real, it will deepen. If it wasn't, it will dissolve. And either outcome is liberation. The art of pulling away isn't about loss. It's about power. It's the quiet strength of knowing that your absence has value, that your silence speaks louder than any plea ever could. And that's the moment. The dynamic reverses when your stillness becomes the most powerful message of all. Something powerful happens the moment you stop reaching. At first, he might not even notice. The silence feels strange but not alarming. He assumes you're just busy. He scrolls through his phone, checks his messages, and expects to see your name light up the screen like always, but it doesn't. A day passes, then another. That tiny space, the one you created with intention, starts to whisper. It speaks in ways words never could, and without realizing it, his mind begins to wander. He starts to think about you. Not because you reminded him, not because you reached out, but because you didn't. This is the psychological pivot. When the brain begins to chase what it once took for granted, scarcity flips the switch. What felt certain now feels uncertain, and uncertainty breeds obsession. He starts wondering why things feel different. Did something happen? Did he push too far? Did someone else enter your life? That inner dialogue is what creates desire. Not begging, not pleading, not proving your worth. Desire grows in silence. Distance forces the heart to listen. Because when you stop pouring your energy into constant communication, he has no choice but to feel the emptiness you left behind. And in that space, something begins to shift. His emotional rhythm starts syncing to yours. You see, human attraction isn't just emotional, it's deeply psychological. When a person becomes less accessible, they trigger the dopamine system in the brain, the very same system that fuels passion, excitement, and pursuit. It's the same mechanism that makes people line up for limited releases, chase unavailable opportunities, and long for things they can't have. When someone feels just out of reach, their mind turns them into a mystery. And mystery is the heartbeat of attraction. Carl Jung once said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. When you pull back, you give space for that transformation to occur. You let the other person feel the tension of your absence, the contrast between having you and not having you. That's where emotional realization is born. Because truthfully, people don't appreciate consistency until it disappears. They don't value warmth until they feel the cold. And they don't recognize love until it's no longer constantly in their hands. When you step back, you create emotional distance. But more importantly, you create reflection. He begins to replay the best moments. Your laughter, your calm presence, your kindness. The brain naturally filters memory through emotion. It highlights what it misses. And suddenly what once felt ordinary becomes sacred. This is where silence becomes your ally. Because silence isn't empty, it's full of meaning. It's in that silence that he starts to feel you again. And here's the paradox. When you stop trying to pull him closer, he starts moving toward you. When you stop demanding energy, you start attracting it. That's the gravitational law of human connection. Energy flows where attention goes. And when your attention returns to yourself, your world begins to glow again. The key isn't just absence. It's what you do within that absence. Because pulling away without purpose is just withdrawal. But pulling away with intention, that's transformation. You begin to recenter your focus. You start doing things you love again. You spend time with people who make you laugh without tension. You rediscover what brings you peace, what ignites your passion, what makes you feel alive outside of romance. And that energy is magnetic. It radiates without trying. It says, I'm whole whether you're here or not. That's when attraction shifts from something you chase to something you command. Because when someone sees that your life doesn't collapse in their absence, it awakens a deep respect and often a quiet fear. Not fear of punishment or loss, but fear of irrelevance. They start to realize they could lose someone extraordinary. Not because of drama, but because of evolution. That's the kind of realization that pierces the ego. Men, especially, are wired for pursuit. It's not about dominance. It's about purpose. When everything feels too easy, it loses value. When something feels earned, it becomes priceless. Your absence reminds him that your attention isn't guaranteed. It's something that must be cherished. But here's where many go wrong. They mistake silence for punishment. True power lies in peace, not in coldness. You're not punishing him. You're prioritizing yourself. You're not disappearing to create fear. You're creating clarity. Because when you stop chasing, the noise fades, and what's real starts to echo. There's a quiet confidence that emerges when you stop needing a specific outcome. You stop overanalyzing every message, every delay, every silence. You simply exist, centered, calm, untouchable. And that energy changes everything. It shifts how people respond to you, how they see you, and how they value you. It's the energy of someone who doesn't beg for love. They embody it. Someone who doesn't need to convince anyone to stay because they know that what's meant for them will naturally align. And that's when the tables turn. That's when the person who pulled away begins to feel your absence like a weight. He starts to notice that your tone isn't the same, that your texts don't come as often, that your world no longer revolves around him. And it triggers something ancient, the instinct to pursue. The shift happens quietly. You won't always see it immediately, but internally the dynamic is rewriting itself. He begins to check his phone more often. He replays conversations in his mind. He wonders if he misread the situation. That curiosity turns into effort. That effort turns into action. And all you had to do was stop forcing the flow. Pulling away doesn't create distance. It creates depth. It's in that pause where realization blooms. And realization is the seed of desire. Because the truth is, you never lost power. You just gave it away temporarily. And now by turning inward, by reclaiming your focus, you're pulling it back. Not through control, but through calm. The calm that says, I'm not chasing you. I'm chasing my peace. And that kind of woman, the one who radiates serenity instead of need, is unforgettable. Because her silence doesn't say, come back. It says, catch up. Silence has a way of echoing in places where words never reached. At first, he doesn't realize it. He thinks it's just another quiet day. You're probably occupied, maybe distracted. But as time passes, something starts to stir beneath his calm exterior. An unease he can't quite explain. It begins with small things. He scrolls through old conversations, remembering the rhythm of your voice, the comfort in your presence. He sees something, a photo, a shared song, a memory, and suddenly, that calm turns into longing. He feels the absence he once thought he wanted. This is where the mirror effect begins. When you withdraw your energy, you don't create emptiness, you create reflection. You give him a mirror to see himself without your constant warmth. And what he sees often surprises him, because when you stop feeding the connection, he's forced to ask, what was I giving in return? He starts noticing the imbalance, how much of your energy kept things alive, Without that energy, the silence starts to feel heavy, like gravity pulling him inward. Carl Jung once wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." That's exactly what space does. It confronts him with himself. It makes him face the parts he ignored, the complacency, the emotional distance he hid behind. And as that mirror reflects, he begins to understand what your presence truly meant. Men process emotion through solitude. While women talk to release feelings, men retreat to organize them. That's not avoidance, it's instinct. When he senses distance, his first reaction isn't to chase, it's to think. But it's in that thinking where realization happens. He starts connecting the dots. The conversations you tried to have. The effort you gave so effortlessly. The patience, the care, the small details. And it hits him. All the things he thought were guaranteed were never promised. That's when the pull begins. The same silence that made him comfortable now makes him restless. He feels the absence in subtle ways. In the quiet moments before sleep. In the random songs that remind him of you. In the spaces where your laughter once lived. It's no longer peace, it's a void. That void is what changes everything. Because desire doesn't grow in abundance, it grows in scarcity. And appreciation doesn't bloom in noise, it blooms in stillness. But here's where your strength shines. You don't break the silence. You let it do its work. You don't chase validation, you embody it. You don't demand clarity, you become it. And that steadiness, that grace becomes magnetic. You see, emotional detachment isn't coldness. It's wisdom. It's the knowing that you cannot force love to grow where understanding hasn't yet been born. As you focus on your own life, your work, your peace, your self-care, and your energy changes, you become centered, radiant, whole. That kind of energy isn't loud, but it's felt. It moves differently. It speaks without speaking. Men notice energy before they notice words. When your energy shifts from anxious to assured, from needing to choosing, it creates polarity, the natural tension that fuels attraction. Polarity is the dance of masculine and feminine energy, the magnetic push and pull that creates desire. When you were overgiving, the energy was flat. No contrast, no charge. But when you stepped back into your feminine power, your calm, your self-trust, your stillness, the polarity reignited. Now he feels it, not through confrontation, but through contrast. Your energy used to chase. Now it receives. Your voice used to fill the silence. Now it rests in it. And that shift reverses everything. The man who once pulled away now starts leaning in. Not because you demanded it, but because you stopped demanding anything. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That's what this moment reveals, his unconscious patterns. The avoidance, the emotional withdrawal, the fear of losing control. Now in your absence, those patterns rise to the surface, and he can't escape them anymore. He starts realizing that your silence isn't punishment, it's evolution. That you're not playing games, you're growing. And that growth forces him to face a question he can't ignore. Was I ready for a woman who knows her worth? Because that's what this journey is really about. Worth. Not revenge, not validation. It's about remembering your power, your boundaries, your light. When you detach with grace, you aren't losing love. You're raising its standard. You're saying without words, I no longer chase attention. I attract alignment. And that energy speaks volumes. He might not say it immediately, but he feels it. In the pit of his stomach, in the pull of his thoughts. The realization hits. He misses how he felt around you. Not because you made him the center of your world, but because you made him feel seen. And now in your silence, he sees himself differently too. That's the mirror effect. It doesn't just reflect the other person. It reflects you back to yourself. You start seeing your own strength, your resilience, your ability to love deeply without losing yourself. You realize that your peace isn't negotiable. And that realization is liberation. Because when you no longer fear losing someone, you gain everything: clarity, confidence, freedom. That's when your power becomes untouchable. It's no longer about winning someone back. It's about standing in your truth so completely that whatever leaves is meant to. And from that place, love transforms. It stops being a tug of war. It becomes a dance. Two individuals moving freely. yet drawn together by choice, not by need. That's the beauty of emotional independence. It doesn't make you harder to love. It makes your love more meaningful. Because now it's not coming from emptiness. It's coming from overflow. And that overflow is what draws him closer. Not because you're chasing him, but because your energy whispers something no words could ever say. I'm not afraid to lose you because I've already found myself. There's a moment that happens after the silence has settled. A calm after the storm. You've stopped reaching. You've reclaimed your rhythm. You're no longer sitting by your phone waiting for validation that you now know must come from within. And slowly something changes, not in him but in you. You start to feel lighter. There's peace where anxiety used to live. You find yourself smiling again, not because someone reached out, but because you remembered what life feels like when it's yours. That is power. Independence is magnetic because it radiates self-assurance. It says, I am not waiting to be chosen. I have already chosen myself. And that vibration, calm, confident, grounded, is what draws people back. Not the begging, not the tears, not the explanations. The energy of someone who knows their worth cannot be ignored. When you stop chasing, you didn't lose him. You lost your fear. And once fear is gone, attraction changes shape. It's no longer about proving your value. It's about embodying it. Men feel that shift deeply, because for the first time, they sense that your world doesn't orbit around them anymore. You've become your own center of gravity, and that realization sparks something primal. Curiosity, respect, and yes, desire. This is where emotional polarity reaches its peak. When two people stand in their own strength, attraction becomes effortless. It's not about control or dependence. It's about choice. Two strong individuals choosing to walk beside each other, rather than leaning on each other for balance. Carl Jung once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And that's what this stage is, the privilege of becoming. The transformation that happens when you stop chasing someone and start rediscovering yourself. Because independence isn't isolation and it's identity. It's remembering that your life, your joy, and your peace don't begin or end with another person's affection. You were whole before them. You'll be whole after them. And that wholeness, that quiet, unshakable confidence is what makes you unforgettable. As your energy realigns, something beautiful happens. You begin to attract differently, not from desperation, but from alignment, not from lack, but from abundance. The world around you responds to this frequency. New opportunities open, new people take notice, and the one who pulled away starts to feel the shift like a change in the weather. He might not even understand it. He just feels drawn back, not to the old version of you, but to the woman who emerged from the silence. The woman who doesn't beg to be seen anymore because she finally sees herself. And that's when respect replaces indifference. That's when interest replaces hesitation, because nothing is more attractive than a woman who doesn't need attention, but naturally commands it. But this isn't just about him. This is about you mastering the art of emotional balance, the ability to love deeply without losing your center. It's about building boundaries that protect your peace, not walls that block your heart. Boundaries aren't barriers, they're definitions. They say, this is who I am. This is how I expect to be treated. They create clarity where confusion used to live. And clarity is power. When someone knows where you stand, they can meet you there, or they can walk away. Either way, you're free. You see, emotional maturity is the bridge between love and self-respect. Without boundaries, love turns into dependency. With boundaries, love becomes a conscious choice. And people are drawn to clarity, because clarity feels safe. Clarity feels steady. And steady energy is irresistible in a world full of uncertainty. When you communicate your standards, not through arguments or ultimatums, but through calm consistency, you send a signal that you value yourself, and the right person will rise to meet that standard. This is the point where your energy and presence start to redefine the relationship. He no longer sees you as someone waiting for his attention. He sees you as someone living fully, with or without it. He starts to realize that your value isn't in your availability, it's in your depth. He begins to remember the spark, not the early excitement, but the sense of calm, mystery, and strength that first drew him in. Because when you're centered, when your life is rich and full, You become the embodiment of something rare. Peace in motion. That's what makes you magnetic. Peace is rare. Stillness is rare. And in a world obsessed with noise, the one who carries quiet confidence becomes unforgettable. This is where everything reverses. You no longer wait to be chosen. You choose who deserves access to your peace. And here's the paradox. When you stop needing anyone to complete you, the right person will move mountains to be near you. Because true love doesn't chase control. It seeks connection. When a man senses that you're not dependent on his validation, his instinct isn't to pull away, it's to step up. Because respect has replaced pressure. Desire has replaced obligation. And freedom has replaced fear. That's the space where real commitment grows. Not from demands, but from admiration. Not from fear of loss, but from recognition of value. Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." You've awakened. You've shifted from looking outward for reassurance to looking inward for peace. And that awakening changes everything. Because the moment you realize that your value doesn't depend on who stays or leaves, you stop living in reaction. You start living in creation. You stop asking, "Why did he pull away?" and start asking, "What is life calling me to become?" That's the shift that transforms love from attachment into connection. A love that breathes, evolves, and grows in freedom. And as your energy expands, the world begins to mirror it back. People respond differently. Opportunities appear. Even the one who once drifted away starts to orbit closer, drawn by a force he can't name. The quiet power of a woman who no longer fears her own solitude. Because that's the truth of attraction. When you stop needing love to fill you, love begins to find you. Everywhere. When peace becomes your foundation, everything begins to fall into place. Not because you forced it, not because you begged for it, but because you became aligned, mind, heart, and energy. There's a power in calm that no words can imitate. A stillness that speaks louder than noise, that says, "I know who I am, and I don't need to prove it." That's the moment your energy stops chasing and starts attracting. It's not a trick. It's resonance. The truth is, love was never meant to be a chase. It was meant to be a choice. Two people meeting where peace and passion coexist. But most people never get there, because they're too busy trying to control outcomes. You've learned the secret. You can't control connection. You can only cultivate your energy and let the right people match it. When you stopped trying to pull him closer, the silence didn't push him away. It gave him room to feel. It gave him space to see what life looked like without your presence woven through it. He begins to sense the difference. Not in grand ways, in quiet, almost imperceptible ones. The mornings feel a little emptier. The conversations around him lack the warmth yours carried. He scrolls, but nothing feels the same. Because what he misses isn't attention. It's energy. That's when realization sets in. He remembers how effortless it felt when you laughed. How grounded you were when he lost focus. How your silence never meant withdrawal, but peace. And now, in your absence, that peace becomes the thing he craves most. Not drama, not attention, not chaos, but the calm energy that only you carried. That's what true attraction feels like, not urgency, but alignment. By stepping back, you did something few ever do. You gave him the space to miss you in truth, not in ego, because missing someone from the ego says, "I need to win them back." Missing someone from the soul says, "I finally understand their value." That's the moment the ego cracks open, and understanding begins. Carl Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Your silence did exactly that. It brought light to the shadows, his avoidance, his fear of commitment, his tendency to pull away when things got real. Now, in your absence, he sees it clearly. But what matters most is this: you've changed too. You no longer wait for closure from someone else's growth. You've built your peace, not as a defense, but as a home. You've learned that the same love you were giving so freely outward could be directed inward, to heal, to grow, to rebuild. You've stopped asking whether he will return. Because in truth, the person who needed to return was you. To your joy, to your self-worth, to your freedom. That return to self is what makes everything else possible. Because now, whether he comes back or not, your peace stays intact. Whether he realizes your worth or not, your value doesn't shift. You've broken the pattern of overgiving, and in doing so, you've rewritten the story. Now, love no longer feels like a battlefield. It feels like a garden. You don't chase the sun anymore. You become it. You don't beg for water. You attract it. You stand still, radiant, grounded, and watch what naturally blooms around you. And often in that blooming, something unexpected happens. The one who pulled away begins to return. Not because you asked, but because silence became the mirror that revealed his truth. He comes back differently this time. Slower, softer, quieter. The energy has changed. The power dynamic has shifted. You are no longer waiting to be chosen. You're standing in your own light, and now he must rise to meet it. When he reaches out, you don't rush to fill the space. You listen. You observe. You let his actions reveal his intentions. Because you've learned that love isn't proven by promises. It's proven by consistency. If he has grown, you'll feel it. Not in words, but in energy. If he hasn't, you won't need to force distance again. Because you've mastered the art of letting go with peace. That's the beauty of evolution. You no longer cling out of fear. You release with love. And in doing so, you give life permission to bring what's meant for you closer and remove what isn't. When you live from that space, everything changes. You stop over-explaining. You stop overcompensating. You stop performing for affection. Because you've realized that your authenticity is the attraction. And if he returns, it's no longer as the center of your world. It's as a guest in it. A world you've built with care, with purpose, with peace. A world that no longer collapses when someone leaves, because it was never built on them. It was built on you. And that's the moment true love can finally exist, when both people are whole. When the dynamic isn't about need, but about mutual choice. That's the kind of love that lasts. Not because it clings, but because it breathes. You've discovered what so many never do, that the greatest form of attraction isn't physical, or even emotional. It's energetic self-mastery. When you know who you are, when your peace is non-negotiable, when your boundaries are sacred, once you become untouchable. And that's why your silence was never empty. It was sacred. It was the sound of you remembering your worth, the sound of transformation, the sound of you stepping fully into your power. So now if he reaches out, meet him with calm, not as the person who once begged for closeness, but as the person who learned how to create it within herself. Let your energy say what words never could. I'm no longer afraid of losing you because I've already found myself. And if he doesn't return, that's peace too. Because peace doesn't depend on outcome. Peace is the prize itself. You've come full circle, from overgiving to grounded, from confusion to clarity, from chasing love to becoming love. And that's the quiet, powerful truth. When you stop running after love, it starts running toward you. Not because you manipulated the outcome, but because you finally matched the vibration of what you were asking for all along. This is the end of chasing, the beginning of becoming, and the start of something far greater than attention, alignment. So breathe, stand tall, let silence keep working in your favor. Because when peace lives inside you, everything that's meant for you will always find its way back, effortlessly.